So if you were with us yesterday, you saw we did a live stream from the Chicago Auto Show. We actually did two over 2 days. Now, you know, I'm not a big fan of doing auto show videos, but the show literally is over. They are breaking down the booth to make it ready for the public days. I couldn't go without talking about this, because if you've been watching the show for a while, you know I'm a Supra guy. I've owned a Supra. I've also owned an RX-7. I loved my Supra. So today, you and I are going to do a very quick walk around sort of tech review of the A90 brand new, I'm going to say it, Toyota Supra. I would argue the worst kept secret of the century was that BMW and Toyota were going to collaborate on a car or two cars. Those cars became the BMW Z4 and the Toyota Supra. Now, this is not exactly a rebadged BMW Z4 because it's BMW that engineered the car and Toyota did the styling of this. This was based on the FT1 concept that came out, I feel like, a century ago. So let's unpack some of the things that make up the new A90 Supra. But to do that, I got to understand where we came from. My A70 Supra, which, what is that, a Mark III Supra? That had an inline six, 3 liters. It was a whopping 188 horsepower, normally aspirated. Mine was a stick with the sport roof. I had two friends that also had A70 Supras, but they were turbochargers, and they, of course, went out and got the HKS kits on them, and they had different stages that were on offer. One of them had, I think, stage 4. He was up to like 300 horsepower, and then another friend with stage 6, he was like 450 or 500. It was crazy. Anyway, none of that. This is a 3-liter inline 6 from BMW. If you're familiar with the 340, like a 2017, 2018 model year BMW 340, that is the B58 Inline 6, so it's a turbocharger, twin scroll system that BMW talked about in many episodes. Click on the link here and it'll take you to a car that has it. This is 335 horsepower that comes in at 5,500 RPM, and 365 pounds of torque, comes in at 1,520 RPM and stays flat all the way up to 4,500 RPM. Now, huge provision here. The engine speeds where I gave you those output figures, that's not official from Toyota. I went and did some digging on I think it was a 2018 model year 340 to get those numbers of the engine speed. So this may vary when it comes to production. Now, the sad news is all 3 Supras, the A70s I told you about, they were all manual transmissions. There is no manual transmission on offer just yet. I did some more digging on BMW forums and found that in early 2019, or really mid-2019, I think, BMW is going to come out with an S58 variant of that B58. I'm actually thinking of the N55 that came before the B58, so it replaced the N55. Anyway, there's going to be an S58 engine. Now, that's going to have more horsepower, but that could very well also bring about a manual transmission. Now let's geek out on some of the aspects that impact driving dynamics. But before we do that, once again, we have to look back at the A70 and the A80 Supra. Not well known, but the A70 Supra was the first one that introduced adjustable dampers to the Supra range, and then it took it to a different level in the A80 Supras. Mine did have the adjustable dampers. It was optional. Didn't make a huge difference, not like those Mercedes we drive with the Sport Plus, very, very different. Here, there are adjustable dampers fitted as standard, comes from the BMW range, as well as some of the other things that are dictated by the development of the platform of the Z4. Like, for example, the wheelbase, 97.2 inches, the overall length, 172.5, and the weight, and this is really important when it comes to a sports car, 3,397 pounds. Put that in comparison to one of my favorites, a 911, that's kind of in the hunt, because you think about a normal 911 is somewhere between 3,200 and 3,300 pounds. You get into the lightweight GT3s, they get into 3,100 and 3,200 pounds. So this is very unusual to see for a car that frankly is not $150,000 with exotic materials. Then what is it made of? So in the back, it's a multi-link unit. In the front, it's a strut type setup. And let's press on to what's hanging off the suspension. That's the wheel and tire package. So all Supras are fitted with 13.7-inch diameter rotors all the way around. The only difference between the front and the back is the calipers in the front. So they're Brembos, but it's 4-piston caliper in the front as opposed to 2 in the back. Then the wheel and tire, it's 19, so basically anything you want as long as it's 19s. The front tire is two 55/35 R19s. In the back, two 75/35 R19s. And then last but not least, as it relates to driving dynamics, the weight distribution from front to back is 50-50. Inside, it's a bit of a mishmash. Way more BMW than it is Toyota. And some of it, that's a good thing, like the tactile feel, the switchgear, all of that is very much straight out of a BMW. Where I would have liked to have seen way more attention to detail, and that is the overall design language in here. Like, they did a great job on the outside. I'm personally one of the people that think it's a good-looking car. But you look inside and it definitely, even the seats look like they're BMW. The infotainment screen that sits on top of the dash, all of the switchgear. But again, the switchgear is the good part. I think if I were doing any critiquing or if they were going to do a 2.0 version of a collaboration, this is more, think of this as like an open letter to any manufacturers that want to collaborate on projects that are low volume, and that's kind of why this car exists. It's low volume, it's a different time from A70s, A80 Supras, where there was more sales of cars like that. Now everybody buys crossovers. This is going to be about $50,000, so why can't we get into separating the design of the interior? Like, keep the switchgear very much the same. It's almost like the Aston Martin. The first time Aston Martin did the collaboration with Mercedes switchgear, it's lifted in the DB series, DB 11s and the V12s and the V8s. But you look at the new Vantage, that is a much better integration of Mercedes switchgear with their own design language. Would have liked to seen that here. There is something interesting though that's on offer. There's a 1,500 unit run of a launch edition. It's only available in a couple of colors, but with the white or the black, that can be had with a red interior. And the launch edition, probably the best version, is this very cool gray that they have. It's almost like that Mazda gray. Last but not least, let's cover some logistics. There are two flavors on offer. There's the base 3.0 and there's the 3.0 Premium. The 3.0 has like a 6-inch screen. It has pretty much all the stuff one would want in about a $50,000 car, which is what it costs. It's a shade under $50,000 US. Then there's the 3.0 Premium that adds a bigger infotainment screen, 8.8 inches. It adds a fancy stereo, and most importantly, this is a BMW product, so it has wireless CarPlay. That's about $53,000 US. There's a driver's assistance package that's on offer. I think that's just a shade under $2,000. But then that launch edition we talked about, that's on offer for just over $55,000, and that one is limited to 1,500 units. Now, before we close out here, not just because I love Supras, Supras are officially collector items. You guys remember our old friend of the show, Dave Kinney. He literally writes the book on collector car values. So this is the latest installment, and I wanted to bring it here to the show because I need to share with you some amazing numbers. So my 88 Supra, my A70, a basket case, non-turbo, starts about 4,800 US, but a fully mint condition A70 turbo with a sport roof and a stick, that would be 20,000 US. Now, I know what you're gonna ask. What about the 94 Supra? Because that's the one everybody wants. The basket case car that's probably been beat on, because people watch too many Fast and Furious movies, that's just over 20,000 US. That's condition 4, barely a moving car. But then, wait for it, a perfect condition, not molested Supra Turbo, Mark IV. They are out there, 105,000 US. But the most important part is, if it has an automatic, you deduct 5% of the value just for the automatic. So, covered the new car, covered some classic dollars and cents figures on the old car. I'm going to turn this around to you guys and say I cannot wait to drive this car. I'm super excited, even if it is a BMW. I'm going to reserve judgment until I drive the car because, anyway, I don't want to influence any of your decisions here. Couple of things. Number one, do you like the design? Number two, how do you feel about the collaboration of BMW making this car for Toyota and them restyling it? And number three, what would you change? Let me know in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV all one word, MotoManTV all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I believe we're gonna go back to the studio, see what Kumo is doing, and maybe, what are we doing? Oh yeah, we're gonna drive a Toyota coming up soon, but not this Toyota. This is the Toyota we're gonna drive, I think, in 2 weeks. And number two, I wasn't kidding when they're literally throwing us out. This is how they transition the show from media days to public people days. So, until I see you next time, bis später.